Screw the pre-show. It's dead anyhow.
Hello, Hockey World. It's Tuesday, November 6th, 2018.
I'm Michael Agello on location.
I'm Peter Tessier staring at snow.
Wow.
I'm Russ Cohen from Sportsology, and I ain't got no snow.
And I'm Eklund. You're watching HockeyBuzzcast on HockeyBuzz.com. This is the podcast that comes every Monday through Friday at this time to fill you in the comings and goings in the hockey world. I got to stop that call while it's coming in. Today we have a going in the hockey world. And a surprise, a big surprise, I think.
The timing's weird, but it's not a big surprise.
Yeah, I mean, my camera's messed up. One second, I'll be right back. But I think it is a little bit strange. I mean, I think that more than anything, I mean, the biggest thing about Quenneville being fired today, it has to do with the fact that here is a guy who will definitely get another job very quickly in the NHL, as quickly as he wants one, basically. So
I'll let Russ go on about this because I think he noticed it first when we were both at the draft in Chicago in 2017. A lot of reporters noticed Joel Quenneville basically stomping off the draft floor, and I believe it was when the Yarmulson deal was made. Yeah. And at that point, even though he's had all the success and he's won 3 cups, you started to see the foundation of that team that won cups sort of being frittered away. And that was a player that you could get away with 3 defensemen at certain points. You can't get away with 2, right. and that was the problem. So he trades Yarmulson to Arizona basically as a salary dump, and replaces him with Connor Murphy. And I've been a critic of Connor Murphy because I just don't think he's that good. But the long and the short of it was that was the first sign of any discontent between Quenneville and Stan Bowman, and now we see what happened.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that a lot of people really felt as if he was, the Hawks were not going to do that well. It came out pretty good. I mean, but now when you look at it, they are 6-3, so they're basically 6-9, and and they're out of the playoffs again. But they did have a good start. The one thing about the Hawks you always have to remember is they are a team that hates when publicity goes the wrong direction for them at all. They are a team that absolutely has to keep the publicity ball rolling. That's what they do.
Well, here's the thing. I mean, like Mike said, at the 2017 draft, it's hosted in Chicago. The Blackhawks trade Yarmulson. We all and I'm down on the draft floor, so I'm pretty close to the action. And I do see Quenneville get up and leave. And he left and he never came back. And that's the home team host there, right? Now, granted, a coach doesn't mean anything at the draft, but I knew at that point we had a problem. And you knew that it was because one of his players left that he didn't like. Yeah. And so from that point on, the relationship between he and Bowman has not been good. And so it could have happened anytime after that. So I just think because they're winning right this moment, people are like, well, why now? Because he's winning. But there were things going on that it didn't matter what the record was.
Right. There were definitely. I mean, and when you fire a coach of this magnitude, like a coach who's won 3 Stanley Cups, there's always more to it than the record. This isn't about the record. This isn't about. There's definitely something else. There's and there's matter of fact, that Bowman and I think has made certain trades that Quenneville has asked for that haven't worked out. But he's been a little bit bitter about it, and I think that, and I think a lot of that has to do with players that have come back to the team. A lot of the players that have been brought back to the team over the years.
But he liked it. The problem was, even though that did happen, and I do believe you're correct on that, the problem was he liked his defensive core, and when that was broken up, he tried his best to make, the Kempneys of the world and other guys work, but it didn't work for him. He's got to have certain guys that work with his system. He had found those guys. Then all of a sudden they get capped out, so they got to trade them, and he had a hard time transitioning others into it. That was the biggest, issue that was going on with the Blackhawks.
There's only one team in worse caps situation than the LA Kings, and that's the Chicago Blackhawks. Because basically, you have 4 key players in there, and 2 of them are certainly almost untradeable. The other 2 are tradable, but not without taking a loss. And you've built those are your core pillars of the team. Quenneville can do a lot of things. There's no question he's a good coach, but when the pillars are part of the problem, you can't coach around those and make them something they're not anymore. And whether he had a role in how the team was shaped or not, at the end of the day, that team is married to those players because you're just going to have too difficult a time trading them. So Bowman had no choice. Is it the right way of doing it?
Well,
I don't know, but he really had no choice.
Yeah.
Well, that's the question here, Peter. Is this the opening salvo of the rebuild, or is this just like, okay, we're going to bring in a young coach and hope he sparks, this veteran core that that Bowman thinks is better than is actually playing right now. Now, I don't know much about Jeremy Colleton, but he's 33 years old. He played. A reporter was saying this morning, he played in the under-18s with Brent Seabrook. He's the same age as Brent Seabrook.
I remember watching Colleton play more than a few times.
Yeah, so we're not talking about, and he's coached 1 year in the American Hockey League, and Rockford had a decent year, but still, we're talking about a neophyte as a head coach. Is this just, okay, let's try something new? This is not an interim. They didn't say interim. They said he's the next head coach. So it sounds like they're going to go with him for a while until they see what happens. But you look at that roster, and I think Kane and Taves are tradable, but why would they want to? There's the centerpiece players, and I think Brent Seabrook is completely untradeable with the salary that he's making and how far his game has decompensated. And I think they could trade Duncan Keith, but the thing is the will there to tear apart the remainder of the core?
No, it's not. And look, Carlton will have help. He's got there's still a good group there as far as knowing what it takes and handling the room. And so I don't think there's any problem for Carlton. And like people pointing out in the chat room, he developed people at Rockford. I don't know if, like Matt says, Dylan Sikora is coming right up. I think you still got to give him some time. He's a little bit older than some prospects because he's from the college system, but I wouldn't rush him up, even though he's a talented guy. Ed Stoll's a guy, sure. Yeah, you could bring him up. They're going to have to do things like that. Again, changing the coach doesn't make me think this is a playoff team. I still think they're going through a transition here, but better to go through the transition with a happy coach than a coach that certainly, was on his last legs with this team. A lot of teams will want him. We could talk about that after.
Well, and this is the interesting thing. Now, he was, I believe, the second highest head coach in terms of salary behind Babcock. He was making $6 million. He's under contract until the end of next year, so he could essentially sit at home or go skiing or whatever he wants to do, and collect his $6 million. Does he want to jump right in again, like Randy Carlyle did a few years ago when he got let go by Anaheim, or Bruce Boudreau did when he got let go by whoever, because there's been a few teams he's been let go by. Yeah. Or does he just want to wait for his perfect chance? And we can go through 3 or 4 teams that I think would maybe change their plans in terms of who, firing their current head coach and maybe bringing Quenneville in. He has the ability to pick and choose where he wants to go.
I got a bigger question, Mike. Behind you, they've got the 2% milk and cream, but they don't seem to have skim milk. That seems to be a problem. Anyhow,
I think. When
did you say skim milk? I thought everyone in the United States called it non-fat, because I've gone into Starbucks down in the US and asked for a skim milk latte or with skim milk, and they looked at me like I was insane.
No. There's a dividing line between the Northeast and other places for what you call certain things.
Non-fat.
Well, that's from Buffalo in the wrong place, but skim milk exists in a lot of other areas.
Good, because that's the correct way.
Yeah. Around here we have skim milk. So but I think that the to me this Hawks team has always been this particular Hawks team is two different teams. You have the lingering aspects, but you also have a really good young core, and the young core is what kind of excites me about them more than anything. I mean, this is there's a good young group with this team, on this team. And,
Well, there's a few good young players, DeBrincat being one of the better ones. And, Hayden and a few other forwards, but really the core of this team is still Kane, Taves, Sod, Heath, Seabrook, Crawford. Now the thing is that group, Sod has not performed up to expectations since the Panarin trade. We know that Seabrook is sort of, starting to show his age. We know Keith is not the same player that he was.
Right.
I think Taves has come back. He had a great start of the year, and Kane is Kane. But, I just don't know whether there's enough there outside of DeBrincat that make this team a competitive team. I agree with Russ. I think they're a team that finishes out of the playoffs, and I don't know if this is Stan Bowman's answer to taking a stab at trying to revitalize what's there, or again, if it's a sort of a realization that we have to go into a different direction, and maybe they start trying to trade a piece or two off of this roster before the deadline.
Yeah, I think they'll dip into the Rockford because they know the coach and hope that they could, catch some lightning in the bottle. I think at some point this year that'll happen.
Yeah, I think it will too. I mean, I think that I don't necessarily agree that I think there's a lot of good younger players on this team, and then you're letting on. And I'm not denying that the core is there, but the big question I guess that's going on within the Chicago fan base that I've been reading, and people have been getting in touch with me from out there is Quenneville taking the fall for some bad moves that Bowman made, or
yes.
Is that the answer, or were those bad moves made because Quenneville demanded them to be made? And I think that's what I wonder. I wonder if coaches at Quenneville's and Babcock's level have say over these player moves.
No. Hold on. Yeah. At the end of the day, you are the GM, and you might put yourself on the line if the coach is closer to the owner than you, but you still don't have to make a deal that the coach wants to. Mike Babcock hasn't gotten everything he's wanted in Toronto. Half of the things I'd say.
Yeah, and the moves that Babcock has been advocating have been the worst ones. The trading second-round picks for fourth-line centers when you're not a competitive team or not a Stanley Cup contender. In this instance, I don't think you could say that Quenneville was responsible for the Armelson deal based on the fact that he was visibly upset when he walked out of the building.
Yeah.
Maybe Panarin for Sod, but you got to remember when that deal was made, this situation that's going on right now in Columbus was what Bowman saw. He knew that he had to trade Panarin because Panarin was never going to sign there, just like he's never going to sign with Columbus. So that's what he saw. And he didn't foresee that Sod was going to not play the way he did in Columbus or before with Chicago, but to my mind, that was the reason why they did that deal, and I still defend it in that sense, although Panarin has just blossomed with Columbus.
We should talk about where, who's going to make overtures to him. Doesn't mean he's going anywhere this year, but you got to think there's a bunch of teams. But like Peter was talking about pre-show when nobody was on watching, which is the pre-show I like. He was saying that Flyers fans, some of them were saying they don't want him. Here's the funny thing. Okay. So even though the Flyers did reasonably well on this trip, as well as you could ever hope, they didn't play top competition. And even Hextall came out and said that yesterday.
Yeah.
The win against Arizona is a good win. But at the end of the day, they're still out of the playoffs, still 2-4 at home, still -8 differential, still a bad PK. And I think if you're looking at a Joel Quenneville and you have a chance to get him, even if you think Dave Haxtell is not doing the worst job in the world, you could look and see the writing on the wall with the Flyers. Like, even if they were to make the playoffs, they're around and out again. And
yeah, exactly. If you've got, and I got to run after this, sorry guys, but if you've got a chance to get Joel Quenneville, look at what Joel Quenneville did as the Hawks came into prominence as a team.
Yeah.
Now look at what the Flyers have in terms of talent.
Yeah.
Nolan Patrick, Provorov, Gostisbehere. Who else am I missing? There's more. Couturier, like all these tenants of guys who are any team would love to have on them. Yeah. You need that guy. And the one thing Joel Quenneville can't do is fix the goaltending, but he might be able to fix some other things that give your goaltenders a better chance at some things. And that's I know that's a dirty, awful thing in the analytics community to say that, but coaches can have an effect on certain aspects of the game that are going to give goalies at least a better chance at making a save.
I think,
And that's all the Flyers might need.
Peter, if he goes to Philly, maybe he could find the Patrick Kane puck.
Yeah.
I mean, I think, no, I mean, the skill. Thanks, Peter, and thanks for jumping on today.
Yeah.
I agree with what you're saying, and I think that the question. I was out voting today, and somebody recognized me in line, and they said, what do you think is going on with the Flyers and all this stuff? And I was talking to them, and I said, they said, well, Hackstall had a pretty good road trip, and Nick might have saved his job for now, and that is the talk around here, that kind of thing. So I said, well, I don't know. I mean, I think that I don't think it's completely saved yet. I think that he has to, they're not in the playoffs right now, and if they're not in the playoffs, they're not in the playoffs. So you have to, and now with Quenneville, Quenneville had just happened, while I was out doing this, and I said that's something that if Ed Snyder was still around, he might already be the Flyers coach. That's the kind of move that Snyder made. That was when he had the opportunity to jump on somebody when someone was available at a higher level, then he was a Flyer quickly, if possible. That's one thing.
Well, Quenneville can make the Flyers great again, but
right. But I think
But this is the thing.
Flyers great again.
Couple things.
Uh-huh.
Do you think that Rob Blake is pissed off that he didn't wait an extra day or two?
I know. I talked to somebody out in LA, and he's saying he's not, of course. And then that Desjardins is their guy. And I like Willie Desjardins. I thought that was a great move.
Oh, dude, you won't find a person on earth that doesn't say they don't like Willie Desjardins. He's likable.
Yeah, and I thought he did a pretty good job too. And before so I think this is perfectly fine. I think it's a good move. But this is going to be. This is a really tempting thing if you're the Flyers, because I think, Mike, you're right. I think that the two teams that are going to be tempted the most by this are Philly and St. Louis. And I think that, because these are two teams that both need, they both have the talent, and they're both in the spot where they should be a definite playoff team, and they're not. Right. And I think both teams at least look at their talent level like they should be in the playoffs, and they're not. And I think that, and Quenneville obviously has history being in St. Louis before as well. So that plays into it too, right? So,
yeah, I mean, and I was saying before we went live, that Todd McClellan and maybe Bruce Boudreau are probably very lucky that their teams got off to good quick starts, because a 3-time Stanley Cup winner popping up on the radar, that will make general managers think twice. Now, I think St. Louis makes a lot of sense because, and remember, he has coached in Colorado, he has coached in Chicago, he has coached in St. Louis. He has never coached outside as a head coach outside of the Central Division. So there's a level of comfort there. If he thinks that St. Louis, and with all the players that they loaded up with in the offseason and all the young talent that they have, if he sees an opportunity there to get right back into this with a team that, if they're operating in all 8 cylinders, could be a Stanley Cup contender, then this could be a very short-lived hiatus for him.
Yeah. I think it will come down to losing the Flyers, and someone's gonna have to jump on it quickly too, because it's going to be the situation where if you don't jump on it quickly, that is unless Quenneville is going to be the kind of coach who, when something like this happens, just decides to take some time off and let things settle. Which is very possible. We've seen that before as well. It usually doesn't take. I'm trying to think of the last coach. Obviously, the one that comes to mind right away is Claude Julien, right? Who was basically out of Boston. And, pretty quickly, out in Montreal.
Remember, Eck, Boudreau was let go, and then Anaheim let Carlisle go and hired Boudreau within 2 to 3 days.
Yeah, and the same thing happened with the same thing happened with Julien. So I think that you're going to see these. There aren't that many coaches at this level. The thing about a coach at this level that is really vital. I was just talking to somebody the other day who was talking about Luke Richardson and what Luke Richardson is doing in Edmonton as an assistant, right? And they were saying that and Luke Richardson, I think, is going to be a great NHL head coach at some point too. I really like Luke Richardson. He was a great captain, and he was great to deal with when he was with the Flyers. He's the kind of guy who's kept himself in shape.
Wasn't there issues with the family that he didn't want to go far away from them?
Yeah.
Yeah, there was an issue with his daughter, but she is now, I believe, like in college, or so she's older now, and I mean, I haven't heard anything in terms of the situation continuing.
But with one of the with Richardson, at least, what I've heard people and players in Edmonton say, and this is is that how much they love having a guy like that around, who's like a wily, experienced guy. And I think that the Flyers, there's some Flyers who haven't necessarily had that, because Hackstall is definitely not that kind of a guy. Now, that doesn't mean anything. That doesn't mean he can't be a great coach. Hitchcock wasn't a player or whatever and all that stuff. But Quenneville was a player, was a coach, or is a great coach. He's won Stanley Cups. I mean, there's something that brings a lot to a room in hockey. It just does. There's no two ways about it. A guy like him comes in, and Giroux is not complaining about his ice time. You know what I mean? Not that Giroux is complaining about his ice time now, but I'm just saying that suddenly players aren't complaining about their ice time because they have so much respect for a guy like Quenneville, who comes in and what he's saying, and everything he's doing. So I think that.
But you got to wait till after the season for Richardson. Is Hextall really going to wait till after the season? I don't know.
Yeah, no, I don't think I'm not saying that Luke Richardson's going to be the guy. I was just bringing up the fact of what it means to players to have those kind of people around.
Oh,
so,
I got you.
Anything else? Yeah, because I think that, and I do think there's something to that, and I think there's something to the fact that Quenneville brings in. I mean, here's a guy who is, he's been part of Team Canada. Giroux's played with him on Team Canada. That also plays into this too. It's all this stuff is. It's a small world, hockey world, and it all plays into it in big ways. I think that you're going to see Quenneville. It's up to him, like I said before. Like that's what we don't know yet is no one has gotten to Quenneville yet and said, "What's your next move?" Because really, it is going to be up to him.
Yeah.
If he's available, he's gone. He'll be gone very soon.
Well, let's just say that we have to be thankful that I'm sure not taking pleasure in the demise of Joel Quenneville, but we have to be thankful that this was the story that we spent a half hour on instead of the other big story. But the other big story is still pretty.
Yeah, we got to talk about
it. And I just have to say by starting this, start by saying this: if the Ottawa Senators. If there was one thing that this team has mastered, it's screwing things up.
Okay.
And it's just like whatever can go wrong with it. It's Murphy's Law. Well, it's Melnick's Law now, because every time something goes on that's bad, it's happening to the Ottawa Senators. And this is, nobody other than an Uber driver who was intent on invading somebody's privacy was responsible for this. But Mike Babcock said it today in response to a question. He's like, you can't assume that you're not being listened to or watched every minute of the day, basically. So you saying things like this, they're gonna come back to bite you, and it did. Uh-oh, did we lose Zach here?
Yeah, it did come back to bite him. There's no question about that.
Sorry, camera issue, guys. So this happened though a while back, right? This happened.
No, it happened in Arizona last week. The timestamp.
Okay, no. The timestamp did say 2017.
Yeah, but the players admitted in their statement that it happened in late October when they were in Arizona.
Okay. Look, end of the day, it's definitely come back to bite the players. We could admonish Uber all we want, but the players did something stupid. They did something smart, though. They did take an Uber. If they were drinking, then they took an Uber, so that's great. We can go back to there was a great term that they used on the Odd Couple: loose lips sink ships. And here's the thing: we've all bitched about bosses and everything else. This is like something that happens in everyday life. Although never you on this show, Ek. Don't worry, you're safe. But I just want to let you know that. But the thing is, everybody has griped about something like that. Yeah. And so, are we really supposed to hold these players accountable for this? No. although there are some coaches in the league that probably, you know, wouldn't like it and may put someone in a doghouse for it. End of the day, I can't worry about it. The team says they handled it. You know what? The team's got problems. We know that.
Yeah, it's more an embarrassment. It's an embarrassment on top of an embarrassment. It's the owner. It's the building situation. It's the Carlson situation. It's the Mike Hoffman thing. It's, you know, players accepting arbitration and probably walking in free agency. I mean, it's a multi-system failure with Ottawa. And now I'm not trying to troll the Senators at all, but now the next thing I'm waiting for is Melnick to start talking to Quebec City. You know, the things just have continued to go wrong, and they started off better than I thought. But after getting pummeled by the Sabres on the weekend, I think that, you know, that was sort of a bit of a mirage, and they're going to fall back to what we thought they were going to be, which is one of the worst 5 teams in the league.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. To me, you know, what I heard, I mean, I heard Brent Wallace's story about this, you know, and I heard him talk about, you know, that they brought the players involved in to talk to them about it. And I mean, it's more of a statement to me on just society where we are now, you know, that everything is being videotaped all the time, that you have to be aware of that, you know, and you have to be aware of, you know, of what you say. And yeah, the guys always talk, but, you know, it is kind of dumb of the players to not think that that this could possibly bite them. I mean, you know, there are players. I mean, I've talked to guys who, you know, they're terrified now to go out because of, you know, people with their cameras and stuff like that, and people taking video of them all the time. You know, and other players who are older who said they're so happy that didn't exist when they were alive, when they were playing. You know, not alive, but when they were playing, you know, they were happy it didn't exist then. So to me, I mean, it's just you know, it's not what they said so much as that the fact that they just were dumb enough to not realize that this could possibly be taped. Like that to me is, but like I would never say anything like that in an Uber or anywhere. Like even in the media room, I'm always nervous. I'm nervous in the press box. You know, like when I'm talking to people. You know, the way we sit in the press box, like where Russ and I sit, you know, there's people, there's scouts up above us, like right above our head.
Your stuff, I ignore it.
I know, but I'm when I'm talking to you, sometimes I'm thinking to myself, oh man, you know, they're hearing what we're saying up there.
You hear them too, right? I mean, yeah,
you hear them too, but you know, and it's like, so you have to always be aware of what you're saying, you know, and just be smart about this kind of thing. You know, it's just to me, it's kind of naive that. Like, I think Borikowski ever came out and said it was naive for people to think that coaches don't talk about players and players don't talk about coaches. That is true, but it's also naive to not be aware that this could possibly be taped. Because
Well, I think the only thing that they're lucky with is the fact that the target of their vitriol was the assistant coach and not Guy Boucher.
right.
Because if it was Guy Boucher, then I think there's a guillotine waiting for them at the Canadian Tire Center. And, you know, I mean, it's an embarrassment to the assistant coach, and the fact that embarrassment to the players that they were sort of, you know, talking about him and his coaching techniques, but it's not an irreparable thing.
It is strange for an assistant coach, though, because that's one thing that occurred to me too about it, you know, because we've talked about it many times on here. The assistant coaches tend to be, you know, the ones the players like more than the head coaches. They tend to be the, you know, the good cop and the good cop, bad cop relationship the coaches have with players. So it is kind of odd when you have an assistant that they're not digging, you know, like that they're not, like, at least that they would say the stuff about an assistant was still surprising.
Yeah, but we are talking about Guy Boucher here. We're reaching that time in Boucher's tenure, like it occurred in Tampa Bay, where, you know, the message started to get tuned out. It was around year 2, year 3. He had early great success, and then, you know, his way of pressing buttons got tuned out. And maybe, you know, if that's the case, they can't go to the coach. So, you know, if the assistant coach is responsible for the day-to-day contact, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I don't know what the dynamic is with the Senators. All I know is that, you know, it's a tire fire, and the fire's getting bigger.
Yeah, I mean, it's a problem. I mean, and it's not going to fix itself quickly, for sure. You know, Helene Elliott has come out and said that she was told that Quenneville's sudden availability does not change the Kings coaching plans, which have Desjardins as the interim coach for the rest of the season. I mean, they Desjardins an interim coach.
They named Desjardins interim coach for the rest of the year yesterday. Right. They can't go back on it. If they just said interim and then it were opened up. I mean, again, I don't know whether Quenneville would be interested in the LA job.
Yeah.
Only George Steinbrenner would do something like that. Name an interim and then the next day fire the guy.
Yeah,
well,
right.
hey, he did it. He did it at the Old Timers game. Don't you remember, Russ?
Yeah.
Bob Lemon sitting in the dugout, and he says, and they announced Billy Martin. It says, and the manager next year of the New York Yankees, Billy Martin.
Right.
Right. Did anybody see what Babcock said about this whole situation? I heard about that too.
Yeah, just check my timeline. I had the quote.
Right.
Check my timeline.
Would you like to share it with us right now?
Well, I can't because
Okay.
I'm on my phone.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. That's what I thought you were like saying.
That's why I was saying check my timeline. It's like I'm not like
What was the gist of it, Mike?
The gist of it is that you cannot assume that you're not being watched or listened at any time. You have to, I mean, and I think he's right. I mean, I think you can't, if you go out in public, one of the things he said was, when somebody says you're off the record, there is no off the record.
Yeah,
Right.
I've learned.
But the
Go ahead.
feeling that I got, well, Mike, I do want to update you. Your timeline, the anchor bar just followed you. The thing about Babcock is, I do want to say that the gist that I got was, if you're dumb enough to get caught on video like that, I'm not going to be happy, and I'm going to deal with it a different way. Like, that's the gist that I got from like Mike Babcock.
Yeah. That's what it's. Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah, if the anchor bars follow me, then I hope I'm going to be followed by Ipecac syrup.
Oh man. So an interesting thing of all the, someone was bringing to me the other day, of all the Canadian teams that are in the playoffs right now, which is like the most I think we've ever had, and since I've been at HockeyBuzz at the same time, I think right now 5 of them are.
I think it's 5 or 6.
Great Canadian dream.
I know. I mean, it's like, when are we going to get another Canadian Stanley Cup? That's been the big question forever. I mean, looks like we've got at least a half decent shot here. I mean, we've got like a lot of teams.
Well, this is a conspiracy act. What this is it's a plan to keep Bob Cole's career going. If they have 3 playoff series with 6 Canadian teams, they've got to give him games in the postseason.
Right. We got six right now. So no, 6 or 7. So everyone but Ottawa right now in the playoffs.
There you go.
That's pretty crazy. I mean, it is phenomenal to me that the points are so tight. Throughout the entire league right now, it's obviously really tight, and you see where teams are. But what I like to look at is more like the streaks of how teams been playing in the last 10 games and stuff like that, to kind of get a perspective as to what's going on right now and where the problems are. And one of the problems has definitely been Columbus. Who is, they're just out of the playoffs right now, and they've got they've only played 14 games, but the fact that they're 4-5-1, which let's just admit is 4-6, but we'll call it 4-5-1 in their last 10 games, and then you're starting to see Montreal and Buffalo tumble a little bit, Montreal 3-1-2 in their last. No, I'm sorry. I'm reading the wrong column. Forget that. Montreal's still playing great. I apologize for that.
Well, but look, they beat the Islanders yesterday. I watched the game. I do want to say this, and I love Butch Goring, but Joel Armia, when he was his turn to shoot in the shootout, he basically said, well, Joel Armia is not really a goal scorer. And he went boom, boom, scored the goal, game over. It's like, you would hope that in this day and age, we would learn that it doesn't matter if you could score goals in 5-on-5 or on the power play. Shootout's a whole different thing. And these guys practice moves, and coaches see them do it, and they get a feeling for certain guys. Yeah. And Joel Armia still has a lot of skill. He really does. And you know what? It was a great shot. It was quick too.
Yeah, don't you remember Merrick Malik was the highlight goal for the Rangers? I mean, come on, defensemen can do this. So it doesn't mean that just because you're Joel Armia is never going to be a 30-goal scorer, but he's a former first-round pick. He's a talented player. He serves a role, and he's got the capability of putting a move on somebody in a shootout.
Yeah, for sure. No, he's got a ton of talent. I mean, there people in Winnipeg, were not happy when he was.
No, he actually finally found a role, and he was really good at it in Winnipeg.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, it's very true. I mean, I think the game tonight, I was trying to think. There's a lot of good games tonight, but Obviously, you're already a good one up there, Mike, with the Vegas being in town.
Well, I mean, Vegas, they've struggled on the road. They're 2-5 on the road. They did beat Carolina 3-0 in their last game, and they're getting Pacioretty back tonight. So that's, I mean, big for them because they're expecting Pacioretty to be a guy who could score some goals. Fleury has not played as well as he did last year. His save percentage is around 900.
901.
901. So yeah, it's not the Fleury that we saw last year. And it's tough. It's tough to reach those, to match those standards. I mean, everything went right with them. And I was talking to somebody from the Vegas media, and I asked them how much they're missing Nate Schmidt, and he said they're missing him a ton. And he's been their best defenseman, and they need him badly. And he's probably gonna. I think he'll be back in less than 2 weeks.
Yeah, he's got 5 games to go. So this is game 15 for Vegas, right? So he's
McPhee was on the midday show, Eck, and what he said was interesting. He can't really determine what this team is until like everybody plays together, like Schmidt and Stastny and Pacioretty have not even all played the game together yet. More than one game together.
Yeah, that's the true. It's
because Schmidt hasn't played at all, and then even the other two, even Pacioretty and Stastny, have only played a couple of games together. So it has derailed their whole season so far.
Yeah, and the problem is you're not going to get it to 20 games. That's a quarter of the way through the season where you're even going to get the possibility of them all playing together.
Fleury actually, this is a time where like Fleury actually had to play over his head to sort of keep them in contention, and he didn't. And it's maybe because the defense is weakened in front of him. Again, you take away any team's number one, I'm not sure this doesn't happen to anybody else in the league. So I think everybody is susceptible to that. And again, that was a huge loss. And now, like you said, when they get him back, they'll be on the comeback trail.
Yeah.
And on the other side, Toronto, it's sort of Jekyll and Hyde. They're 6-0 on the road, and they played arguably their best game of the year on Saturday against Pittsburgh. I mean, they thoroughly dominated the Penguins, and Anderson played really well. But they're 3-5 at home, and they've lost 4 of their last 5 at home. They've been shut out in the first 2 periods in all of those last 5 games.
Yeah.
It's so they're just, for some reason, they don't know why. They don't really know why they're struggling, but they're hoping they get the first goal tonight, and that seems to be a big thing for them. But again, this is not affecting. Get ready to drink, Eck. This is not affecting the stance of the entire Nylander situation, to the point that Elliot Friedman said yesterday on Calgary radio that he said, basically the Leafs wanted to sign him or want to sign Nylander, but they're coming to the realization that they may just not be able to, because there seems to be no give from Nylander's camp, and they're getting offers, and I mentioned this in my
version of this though. This is like the bedtime story where Leafs fans are being told the bedtime story, like, "Hey, we know it's been really good this season, but you might not get Nylander back." And I think most Leaf fans at this point have counted out the possibility of getting him back. I do, and so if we could just move past the, he may not sign with them. Like, I think he's got a 20% chance of signing with them. And I think that's based on his dad. So again, with all this scouting going on, you would have to believe they're not close to signing him, because nobody would go through this much effort. Rick Dudley wouldn't be in Toronto this much. All these things wouldn't be happening.
And Dudley is again on the roster tonight for the scout list, 5th time in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And Arizona has a couple scouts here as well. I'll list it in my blog after the show. But
Rick Dudley's car broke down in Toronto, and he's just waiting to get it fixed, and they don't have a part. I mean,
he wants some good brisket. That's what he wants.
The strange thing to me about, like, when I look around the league though is is the amount of goals being given up by some of the teams that are actually doing well. Like, I don't know if you guys have noticed this at all, but it's, like, for example, if you go through, like the Capitals, the Capitals are, they're 6-4-3, so they're 1 game under real 500, but still they're, 6-4-3. That puts them in 3rd place. They've only played 13 games, so 3rd place in the Metro Division. They've given up 49 goals in 13 games. Hope
he's not locked in, but you know what I'll let you finish in a sec.
Yeah.
One thing I was going to say about the Capitals, I really don't expect to see them locked in until well after the All-Star break.
Yeah, but that is almost 4 goals a game.
Yeah.
I mean, 52 would be 4 goals a game. They're giving up 49. So they are. I mean, when you play 13 games like that, that's 4 goal. 4. I mean, it's one thing to keep it under 3. It's another thing to keep it under 4. I mean, and then you look at, and you look in the Pacific at Calgary and Vancouver have both given up 50 goals a game, as well. Though they've only played, they played 15 games, so it's a little bit better. But you're still,
and they're 2 of the top teams in the Pacific. But again, it's so early in the season.
Yeah.
That's why these numbers are like counterintuitive to what's actually.
Sometimes they aren't.
Yeah.
Sometimes they aren't, because sometimes they show maybe like a team overachieving, which like Vancouver is right now. Like,
Oh, yeah.
They clearly are. I mean, they are a -3 in differential, and they're in second place in the Pacific. To me, that's a bit of a guys. Now tonight, the game I'm going to be watching, which I think is going to be a fun one, is Edmonton and Tampa, which is on NBC Sports Network. It's kind of interesting. Edmonton's getting more time in Philly. I mean, or more national time in the United States. But so yeah, Edmonton Tampa tonight. That to me is going to be a fun one, because Edmonton has played really well against good teams this year, and Tampa obviously is a good team, and Tampa's been playing pretty well too, as of late. I mean, they're 10-3-1 Tampa. I mean, they're doing what you'd expect them to do.
If anybody cares, I would take Tampa in this one. I would.
No, I would take Tampa in this one too. That's why I said to me, it's a real good test.
I mean, look, McDavid could score a hat trick. I mean, although he hasn't this year yet, but he could.
Yeah. I mean, and then also you have Minnesota and San Jose, which is a late game, which is going to be a good one too.
That's a good one. I mean, again, who would have thought Minnesota would be this good?
I don't know, Russ. You gotta give you credit for that. There, you definitely have them. You had Minnesota for sure. They are second in the Central, and the fact that they've got that they're 8-3-2 is impressive. I mean, and they have yet to lose at home, so that's another.
I mean, the goalie tandem there's really good. I do have a stat for you too. I don't want us to miss this. It came out from NHL PR. Alex Ovechkin's in a tie now with Marcel Dion for 8th in the all-time power play goals list. He's only like 40-something power play goals away from the top now. The top was like 274.
Wow. Who's the top? Is that Gretzky?
I don't think it was Gretzky. Let's see.
It might be Brett. It might be Brett Hall.
It might be Brett. No, Andrew Chuck.
Andrew Chuck. That's right.
Oh, yes.
74. Actually, Gretzky's not even in the list. Here's the list. Andrew Chuck, 274. Brett Hull, 265. Solani, 255. Luke Robitaille, 247. Phil Esposito, 246. Brendan Shanahan, 237. Mario Lemieux, 236. Alex Ovechkin, 234. Marcel Dion, 234.
Wow. Gretzky's not on that list. What a bum.
Yeah. But we are seeing one of the great players ever. And that's why it was nice that he won the Stanley Cup, so nobody could really ever take away these other accomplishments. Because if he didn't win the Stanley Cup, we would always hear this minor bitching like, hey, he's great. But no, he's great, period.
No, he's definitely great, period. And they've been, for all, like I said, they've scored 50 goals. Like, they've given up 49 goals in 13 games. They've scored 50. So they're almost scoring 4 goals a game too. So, for the Capitals, I mean, that's just, they're really playing high scoring games, but that's like 4 goals a game either way. That's really impressive. I mean, the two teams, the two numbers that stick out to me as far as, other crazy stats go, because I like to try to find them.
I have a crazy stat for you after too.
Are the 2 6-0 teams on the road, which are Nashville and Toronto, are both 6-0 on the road.
Which that is crazy.
Which is, and there's no one that's 6-0 at home. There's nobody that hasn't at least lost in regulation at home.
Well, I'll give you a stat based on the differentiation between their home problems and their road success. The Leafs are averaging 2 goals per game in 8 games at home. They're averaging over 5 goals per game on the road. That's why they're 6-0.
Yeah, so much for line matching and coaching, right?
Ha!
I mean, that is a crazy stat. The other one is New Jersey, and then Russ, you've got yours. New Jersey just 5-1-1 at home and 1-4 on the road. That kind of thing is just the strangest thing, because when a team there's that much differential, at least they're winning at home in front of their fans. But
Keith Kincaid won again yesterday. I mean,
and Corey Snyder was a disaster in the games he played. That's a really tough spot for them to be put in right now. They really are. And then the Florida Panthers have yet to win in regulation at home, which is, we talked about the Panthers just being, and that's a real problem in that.
Well, Luongo's back, right? So
Yeah.
Well, and that stat might be a little bit augmented because I believe the game that Luongo won in Finland was considered a home game.
Yeah, they've only played 4 games at home. According to this, they've only played 4 games at home. They're 0-3-1. So I think they called that game in Finland in a road game because they've got 4 home games and 7 road games.
Well, I mean, yeah, I don't.
They've only played 11 games. I mean, remember, the Florida Panthers are the straight thing about Florida. They've only played 11 games. This happens to the Florida Panthers every year. You notice that? Like, the Panthers every year play less games than everybody else and have to play a ton of games down the stretch.
true.
Yeah, they got to save those Tuesday night games in January when nobody's in the building.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask Mike this question because I think Mike needs to get this question asked. So, how many games would they have to lose with Roberto Luongo in net for Bob Buchner's job to be in trouble?
Yeah. Not many, I don't think.
I don't think many. It shouldn't be many.
And is this a place that could go after Quenneville? I mean, this is Dale Talon. Let's not.
Yeah, I just thought about that. I mean, you're talking Chicago connection. We're talking, it's first of all, it's like, I mean, it's beautiful weather down there. I mean, maybe that would attract him.
I mean, think about him and really, really impressive there.
Oh, and Eck, here's your stat.
Mhm.
While Connor McDavid to you is the best player in hockey, Nathan MacKinnon has more points. I just want to point that out.
Yeah, isn't that crazy?
It is and it isn't. I mean,
McKinnon is up. McKinnon is stepping up in acting very much like he deserves to be in that discussion. As far as the best players overall.
I do want to ask that guy who put in comments on Comcast all those years ago about me getting his house if Seth Jones wasn't picked first, how it's working out. Who might be the better player, Seth Jones or Nathan MacKinnon? I just want to ask him if I was wrong putting Nathan MacKinnon first. No, I'm kidding. But MacKinnon really this year seems to have even gone to a different gear. You're right. And I've seen the speed through the neutral zone, which has always been great, even looks better. Like, I don't even know if that's possible anymore because I always felt like as great as McDavid was at speed with the puck, I always felt like going through the neutral zone, MacKinnon was still faster. It's just McDavid would keep up that speed the whole way through. Now it seems like MacKinnon can do it too. And so this is going to be a fun scoring race because you got MacKinnon, you got McDavid, you got Rantanen. Like that's, they're all bunched up. And Patrick Kane's not that far behind either.
And that's one of the shames about the Matthews injury because he was right up there until he got hurt. Yeah. Now losing 20 games, he probably miss 15 to 20 games. He's completely out of it, and I don't think scoring, being a scoring leader, is something that's really on Tavares' radar. I think he just wants to win games, and you have to score to win games. But I'm just saying I don't think that winning Yart Ross is high on his list.
I agree. Well, we're going to get going, but I just want to throw out another thing I've been looking into a little bit. So I'm going to write about this later, a rumor I've been chasing to a degree, and that is the idea of Tuukka Rask being available, which is a strange thing because when I first looked into it, I said that doesn't seem really possible to me, and that seems like people putting a whole lot of faith in Halak very early. I mean, Halak has looked very good.
Where this is coming from because the fans, there's a large fan contingency in Boston that wants this. Like Ty Anderson fights this all the time on Twitter, and it just makes me think that this is contrived.
Yeah, no, it feels contrived to me too. I mean, it is one of those. It feels as at this point as one of those rumors that is sort of in an echo chamber of its own.
Right.
And that does happen. And there is a disease that I call backup goalie, and it's true with backup quarterbacks too, like backup goalie, backup quarterback syndrome for fans. Like the backup is always the better goalie, and fans are always want the backup unless it's obvious. I mean, unless it's totally obvious, fans are totally, we've seen it for years. All over the place.
I'll give you an example. Me, I was at a Jets game where I was screaming for Neil O'Donnell to lose his job, and we were like, Foley, and Glenn Foley of Cherry Hill finally got in the game. He played great. I believe he won that game. He went on a little run, and then that was it for Glenn Foley. But
Yep. I used to play against Glenn Foley.
Yeah, I'm not doubting the validity of the rumor. I'm doubting the stupidity of the fans who are back because honestly, Tuukka Rask is not at fault for the shortcomings of the Bruins over the last few years. They've been dogged by injuries. I mean, this is a team now. I think that they're back to a very competitive level a lot quicker than I thought they were going to be. They've got a lot of good young players like McAvoy and for Rebecca Carlson and Bjork and DeBrusque. I mean, they have a ton of good young talent. It's not Rask's fault. And if you want to go down the Yarrow Halak road, be my guest.
And I mean, honestly, that is a bad road to go down, because if we think about Yarrow Halak in the playoffs, he's had a couple of good playoffs, but most of it has not been great. And I can think of only 2 times where he was really sharp in the playoffs. Now, fans will always find times where they're going to say Rask gave up this goal and but Rask is always there. Like that's the same pigeonholing that happens with Henrik Lundqvist. Same thing.
Yep. Yeah. No, and it's just always been the way it's gone. I mean,
I'm not looking at Cap Central right now, but I'm pretty sure Rask is in the last year of his deal, or he's got one more year after that. Right. I mean, is this something that the Bruins fans are dreaming of, going after Bobrovsky or Varlamov or something?
Guys, hold on, I got somebody at my door. 1 second, I'll be right back.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know if they could really do that, Mike. I mean, can they? If you go for Varlamov as an example, I'm not sure that's a step up, and you're going to pay similar money. If you go after Bobrovsky, you're going to pay more money. I think the Bruins will re-sign him. I think it will be for less term. I think, although he's not old. What is he, 28? I mean, let me look him up.
Rask, he was 2006 draft, I think. So you think he's 30, 31.
He's actually 2 years older. He's 31. But 31, they'll offer him like a 4-year deal.
Well, and I don't think we talked about it while we're waiting for Eck to come back just quickly, because we're at the end of the show in a few minutes. The extension of Pekka Rinne in Nashville, the 2-year extension for $5 million per. I didn't see that coming along, but
No, but we talked about it. You agreed with me when I brought it up. That may happen. They might sign him for a couple of years at just a reasonable rate, and that's reasonable.
Right. That's what Freddie Anderson's making. And that's not it's not top of the line goaltender money. It's not Carey Price at 10.5. It's not Lundqvist at 8. It's decent top 12, top 15 starting goaltender money.
Rask has a .922 lifetime save percentage. He has 41 shutouts. That seems like a pretty high number in this era, actually.
Oh yeah, it does, doesn't it?
It does. I'm going to look up goalies real quick.
No, that really is.
Let me look up Rinne.
Yeah, for sure. All right, and while Russ is doing that, we will start to say our goodbyes. I've got to run, but Mike, enjoy the game up there in Toronto tonight. It'll be fun, and for all of you in the United States, hope you guys got out and voted. If not, go vote as soon as you possibly can. It's definitely worth it, no matter what side you believe on.
Rinne has 53, and he's older. He's played more, I'm sure.
Yeah, he's been around for a while. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's a good number for us.
Really,
I encourage everyone to vote, unless you're voting against the person that I'm voting for. In that case, go to a movie.
Yeah.
Right here, there you go. I got my sticker.
Yeah, I voted today too. Get out there and vote, and then of course tonight we'll watch the whole craziness unfold. Remember, without the buzz, it's just hockey. We will talk to you tomorrow.